I would like to take some time to introduce our next speaker. Let me see if I can find her on my screen. I think I just saw her. Bear with me one second. There she is. I almost said Miss America. There she is, Miss America. But she didn't agree to be Miss America today, so I'm not going to do that. All right. So Amy is also a new speaker in our community. This is her first time speaking. Amy, is your last name said pronounced Vince or Vince?
Vinsa. Vinsa.
Vinza. I knew I was going to mess it up. I'm infamous for messing up people's names. Amy Vinza. Amy's topic today, her presentation is called The Wisdom of Feminine Rage. So buckle your seatbelts, you all. Amy is a health and wellness professional with over 20 years of experience and 16 years as a certified tapping coach. For those of you who are here for my presentation this morning, I briefly discussed tapping as one of the energy healing modalities, but also for releasing stuck emotion. Amy is the founder of the Sour,
Sore.
no, I can't talk today, Amy. Soar with Tapping app. She's the founder of the Soar with Tapping app. She helps people transform stress and chronic conditions through tapping, bringing this powerful, accessible healing tool to a global audience. Thank you so much, Amy, for being here with us today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here and especially to just talk with a bunch of new people, especially about the wisdom of feminine rage. It's my new favorite topic. So, thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to be a first-time presenter in this community and hopefully just engaging with some new people. I do have a PowerPoint presentation that I was going to do. Can I share on my screen?
It's ready now.
Oh, it's ready. Okay.
Oh, Amy, you missed all the Zoom bombing this morning. I had to stop the Zoom sharing, but I think we have a safe environment now. We had some unsettling things this morning.
Oh, okay. Okay. So anyway, I am very excited to be here and to share with you my experience about the wisdom of feminine rage. If you had asked me 10 years ago whether or not I ever get angry, I would have proudly said, I never get angry. I never get angry. I'm so easygoing. I'm so adaptable. And because I really thought that was one of the crowning kind of traits of an ideal woman, to be honest. I thought I should be agreeable. I thought I should be accommodating and easygoing. And so I really strove to take on those qualities, assuming that's what was going to make me attractive to not only a partner, but in friendships too. I thought that's what people wanted from me. The truth is that I still experienced anger, but instead of feeling justified in directing it outwards and maybe in the direction that it should have gone, I would always turn it on myself and developed a huge inner critic. Whatever came up, I would make myself wrong and I would tell myself I should have done this or I should have been better or I should have been smarter. Fill in the blank. It really just became just energy that I directed at my own heart and really did a lot of internal damage that way. And I think this is the pattern that a lot of women have taken on in their lives. And I don't think that it's something that we did willingly or even consciously. I think that we have been conditioned into this type of role in society. And there really is a massive double standard when it comes to having access to and being able to feel angry. Because when women have historically shown anger or extreme emotions, anything other than shiny, happy emotions or complicit or just calm, quiet emotions, we have been called unstable, dramatic, difficult, irrational, hysterical, definitely too much. And we have been conditioned so for thousands of years to stay in this soft and pleasant and submissive role. On the other hand, men Anger was really the only emotion that they were allowed if they didn't want to be called weak, right? If they had shown any sadness or vulnerability, they would have been called weak, but they were always allowed anger and they could really embrace anger without feeling any shame about it. Anger was a strength for them, not a weakness like it was for women. And if you look at our positions in the world between men and women, and we're just talking in general, men have always held these positions of power. And I don't think that it's a far cry to be able to say that is because they have been allowed so much access to anger. And I'm going to get into the reasons behind that for sure. But for women there has been a massive cost to suppressing this anger. Because we're human beings, we still have anger as an emotion, but because we haven't been able to express it and move through it, we have developed all of these conditions, whether they're emotional or physical. Some of it is just difficulty saying no. We don't want anybody to get mad at us. We've been over accommodating. It makes us emotionally exhausted. There's a lot of quiet resentment that can build up over time when we don't have the ability to release this anger. There's physical tension that goes along with it, chronic anxiety, and we start second guessing ourselves a lot because there's confusion because we can feel angry, but then we don't feel the justification to express it or the safety to express it. So there's a lot of confusion, and we start second guessing whether or not we really are allowed to feel justified in our anger. And when we do that over time, we lose this really important signal because anger is a signal that tells us that something isn't okay. And it's something that we need to pay attention to. And we have stopped listening to that voice that tells us something really critical. Because anger is not the enemy. It truly isn't. It provides us with a lot of information. The pattern for women has typically been that we give ourselves access to anger when it comes to our children. We can feel really justified in taking on the role of mama bear and being massive protectors of our children. Same with animals and causes that we care about. We feel really justified in doing that. But when it comes to getting angry on our own behalf, that is a totally different story. That is a totally different story. And we have a hard time really feeling justified in owning that anger, expressing that anger. And again, we turn it inwards towards ourselves, and then we tell ourselves that we're too sensitive and we judge ourselves because we didn't do something right. And the self blame starts to become automatic. When the truth is that anger is our friend, anger is the voice that tells us, or the feeling that tells us that something is unfair, that somebody might have betrayed us, that they're hurting our feelings, that behavior has crossed a boundary, and that we have the right to do something about it. And it also tells us that something needs to change. Anger is actually a very powerful ally for us. And if we have the courage to listen to it and stop that cycle of judgment to ourselves, then we can put ourselves in a better position where we're more balanced between power and vulnerability in their lives. Right now, I think the majority of women we get to the too vulnerable side of things and we don't own enough of our own personal power. And anger is one of the things that will allow us access to that. But this conditioning didn't come out of nowhere because historically, for thousands and thousands of years, women have not felt safe to access anger. If we did, we were labeled hysterical, over emotional, and this still happens today, right? You get into some extreme emotional state that isn't happiness and somebody's all of a sudden accusing you of being on your period. It just happens all the time. And even we witnessed it so deeply with Kamala Harris running for president, and everybody's so concerned that she was going to be over emotional as a leader. And I find that really fascinating. So it wasn't just in the 1970s, it didn't stop there. It's still there today. Even in the early 20th century, outspoken women were at risk of being institutionalized by their husbands for being outspoken, for allowing themselves to have a voice in a marriage. And they were forced into psychiatric treatment. And even in the 60s and 70s, you couldn't independently have a bank account in many US states, and marital rape was still legal in parts of the United States up until the 1990s. So, anger, like, there's a great risk to our personal safety that comes with expressing this emotion. And thankfully, I do think that we are in a great period of change in the world today. And I think that women have much greater access to this without experiencing the type of danger that we would have put ourselves in the past with being having access and using and expressing our anger before. But before, it would have cost us our safety for sure, our financial security and physical security, belonging, and even freedom if we had gone the route of allowing our anger in the past. That's why it's so important that when we start to work through this, that our work has to start with compassion, because it's really easy to, again, blame ourselves like we typically do. But starting it with compassion means looking and seeing that there are reasons why we have gotten to this place. So, the first step towards healing this and giving ourselves permission and feeling safe enough to start reclaiming this part of us, our anger, is to work through all of our fears around it. A lot of us grew up with really destructive examples and terrifying examples of anger, whether that came from a parent or a sibling. It doesn't really matter, or maybe it's even a partner. But our examples of anger are not balanced anger. They are destructive and they are terrifying. And there was reason for us to shrink back into the shadows in order to avoid being hurt. And so we have to work through that fear of anger being really destructive. Either if we start expressing anger, we need to work through the fear of it being destructive for the people around us. And also the idea that we could be viewed the same as those people that we witnessed experiencing destructive anger. So we really learned that anger is a dangerous emotion. There's also fear of changing relationship dynamics. Most relationships are in a dance with our partners or with our friends. I show up a certain way and my friend shows up a certain way, and we have a real dance that we do together in order to maintain the balance in our relationship. And if I start changing the moves of that dance kind of mid-song, I'm going to step on somebody's toes. My partner might back away. What the heck is going on? Feeling really confused about these moves changing. And so it can really be scary to change those relationship dynamics. There can also be a real fear of losing a portion of our identity that we have, that we like, that part of us that is very giving, that part of us that is very accommodating, that people know that they can come to us and we are going to help them through anything. So there's a lot of things that could change with bringing this into our sphere of emotional landscape. And that's why tapping is really helpful through this. We tap through all of these fears and we neutralize all of these fears because we don't want to burn our life down in a process. And just for the goal of incorporating anger back into our life, we need to honor our needs, though. So there's a balance between burning our life down and honoring our needs, and that's the one we want to strike. We want to stop abandoning ourselves and abandoning that surge of anger within us because it has a story to tell and it has a truth to tell that is important that we listen to. And it's normal and natural to feel grief around losing any portion of our identity, fear about gaining any part of a dangerous identity, and really start to embrace the idea that I'm going to become more whole when I start bringing anger back into my repertoire. The second phase of healing is actually just allowing the anger that we have been suppressing for all of these years and turning inward as well, because we have a right to feel angry. And we often do feel angry if there's been a betrayal of any kind, if we've been silenced or overlooked or taken for granted, all maybe for decades. There is rage and it doesn't ever disappear. It doesn't ever go away. It actually lives in our body and it creates physical and emotional tension that needs to be released. We need to free ourselves from this pent up anger that we've experienced. And because if we don't, it becomes hypervigilance and controlling behavior. We tend to shut down emotionally. There's physical exhaustion, anxiety that happens. And when we start to really honor and express that anger and release it from our body, it relieves a lot of this tension. And it really is just telling the truth of our experience. The thing that I want to really place a lot of importance on here is that when we start to allow ourselves that anger and we start to tap through it and really use words that we maybe wouldn't allow ourselves to use in under normal circumstances, or we honor feelings that we would never say out loud, especially in front of a person. The important thing to remember is that we're not hurting anyone when we are tapping in the privacy of our own homes or tapping in a group setting. I do offer the Wisdom of Feminine Rage as a tapping series with a group. And when we do it in that environment, there is nobody is getting hurt on the other end of this. When I was tapping on my mom, I was tapping in the privacy of my own home. She had no idea that I was doing this work, and our relationship has become better for it. That's phase two. And one of the things I want to really emphasize here is when we start to really access that anger, anger and aliveness live very close to each other. So when we start to allow access to that anger, we are lighting the fire underneath desire. We are lighting the fire underneath creativity and sensuality and ambition and confidence and truth. There is a thread that ties all of these things together, and at the center of it is our access to feminine rage. And it is really powerful. And when you start to actually allow that emotion in your tapping, you're going to start to feel it. You're going to start to feel that spark and that fire in you. And it is a very powerful feeling in a very good way. So, phase three of this tapping healing journey and allowing feminine rage is actually getting to the point of integrating it and then releasing it, because we don't want to live in rage. That is moving the pendulum to the other end of the spectrum, and that's not healthy either. We don't want to live in that place of rage. What we want to get to is a place where we can allow it, experience it and express it, and then release it. And so the third phase of this is allowing ourselves to release it. And a lot of people struggle with this. They think that letting go of my anger means letting somebody off the hook. And they deserve to feel my anger. They deserve to feel my wrath and my rage. And the important thing to remember is that they are not experiencing any of that rage, and they are not learning anything from our suffering around this. All they're doing is living their lives, probably clueless that we are suffering with this, with the anger or whatever it is we're experiencing. And the anger only has its barbs in us. It's only being destructive to our spirit and not the other person's spirit. And you have to keep in mind too, that other person has their own journey. I don't need to be the controller of their journey. I need to control my own journey and my own experience. And for me, I don't want to stay in a place of rage. I just don't. I know it's not healthy for me. And I know that it keeps me in a place of also feeling like a victim, which is antithetical to feeling powerful. And I know that's where my energy needs to find more balance, is allowing more ways that I can feel powerful in my life. And I want to just frame this by saying that letting go doesn't mean that you're erasing the truth. You're not excusing harm. You're not pretending it didn't matter. You're not refusing. What you're doing is just refusing to let that pain become your permanent identity. That's what you don't want. You don't want the fact that you were wronged to be the identity. You want to be able to let that go and reclaim the wisdom that you could have gained from it. So, in the end, I just want to wrap this up by saying rage is not the end of the story. We don't live in it. And if you have never typically allowed yourself to be in a place of rage on your own behalf, then it's not likely that you're going to become a rageaholic. You will be far too much of a gatekeeper on your rage in order to make it go that far. But it is a doorway back to recognizing a truth for yourself and back to boundaries so that you can honor where your limitations are. It gets you back to a place of dignity and self respect. And it is more integrating, more balanced, more powerful, and a deeply honest place for you to become more whole. So, with that, I'm just going to wrap it up and say the wisdom of feminine rage is really important. And I do have a tapping series starting on June 9th. It is not posted on my website yet, but it will be there within the next week. So, thank you. And if anybody has any questions, I am open. Let me stop sharing here.
We have 3 minutes or so for questions, and maybe a minute or two more if people have lots of questions. While we wait to see if hands come up, Amy, I loved your talk. And one of the reasons why, even as a therapist, people think therapists always have their acts together, right? That they're really far along on their healing journeys. And of course, we are working on our healing, or we should be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have found I denied being angry for a really long time.
I know, me
And
too. I didn't want to be angry.
the thing is, like, I didn't even believe I was because I had
Yeah.
buried it so deep.
Yeah.
It was easier to feel numb than to feel angry.
Yes.
I had
Yes.
convinced myself. So your talk was especially meaningful for me to hear that. And I know I'm not alone. There's other people that I know in the room that have discussed and written about their anger
Yeah.
and finally being in touch with it. Anyone have a question for Amy? I think I just saw a question. Yeah,
Yeah. Olin said, how much is the tapping session? It's a 3-part series. It starts on June 9th, and each session will be 1 week apart. So they'll be Tuesday, 3 weeks in a row. It's $100 and it's 90 minutes of tapping. So we move through a lot of stuff. The focus is really on spending the majority of our time tapping through all of these things so that we can neutralize as much as possible. And you get the recordings also, so you can continue to work through the tapping rounds on your own and get yourself to a place of really releasing everything. And yes, tapping is similar to EMDR. Tapping accesses trauma a little differently and processes it a little bit differently, but it is relatively the same thing. It is releasing trauma from your subconscious mind using energy, cognitive therapy, and somatic therapies. Absolutely. I use tapping. Somebody asked if I could use it on my kids, 18 and 20. Absolutely. I have tapped on my daughter when she was like 5 and 6 years old if she had an upsetting experience of any kind. I wouldn't hesitate to use tapping on literally anything. It does not hurt anyone. If you're needing to work through really extreme trauma, I would caution you to work with a really experienced coach instead of trying to do that on your own. But in general, tapping won't hurt at all. It will only help. Yeah.
Thank you, Amy. Amy, are you able to stay out for a little bit in case other people have questions
Yes, absolutely.
for the chat? Okay, and if you can't stay, we understand too. But thank you. That was such I really benefited from that presentation. I've been tapping for a really long time. And just a reminder, first of all, you're not going to find many professionals other than Amy and I, and probably Elizabeth, and outside of this room, who are going to offer something so affordable. $100 for a few tapping sessions is really high value, low price point. Please consider. Also, Amy's VIP gift is a whole year of her app. Insanity. So, Amy, thank you for being incredibly generous with your time, money, and energy.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.